nothing more than pawns, suckers.
What do you know?
I find myself here again. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not by intention, but for some reason, every time I thought I'm done with this topic, I find myself here again and again. I find something new, I make some new discoveries, and once again, it's enough content for me to make another video about it. What is going on, everyone? This is your boy Tanveer Sai, the Bengal Dragon. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons. Follow me on Twitter at TanTiger01, as all that support in that free way really helps this legally blind YouTube content creator to remain motivated to making a variety of different type of videos in this channel, and to the YouTube algorithm would really help this channel grow. This is a strange phenomenon, man. Listen, first of all, I have to give a very, very huge shout out to all of my supporters on YouTube and on Twitter. If you must know, this last 5 or 6 weeks or so, this has been behind the scenes one of the most mentally trying times of my life, okay? And just the fact that all my hard work is finally starting to be even acknowledged and shown in the form of my YouTube channel growing, I have nothing but thanks for all of my supporters for showing that type of support in such a testing time. Okay, where I'm going with this is that on YouTube, I now am starting to get a bit of a reputation, if you will. And like I said, this is a place I found myself in without aiming for it, okay? But I find myself to being the Code Veronica story and Claire Redfield character specialist. That other people have said, no one understands Claire Redfield better than me. I'll touch on why it's a bad thing later on in this video, but given that I have made some discoveries involving Infinite Darkness, Degeneration, Revelations 2, and Death Island, it's enough content for me to make a video about it. Let me clarify something. I am in a field involving human psychology for over 10 years now, okay? Before revisiting Code Veronica in 2022, I actually watched the original Batman the Animated Series on Amazon Prime. I have never seen Batman the Animated Series before that point. And it is from watching Batman the Animated Series that I learned what to look for in terms of great storytelling and elements such as how the mind deals with trauma in a variety of ways. It is this narrative that gives the villains of Batman so much depth. In terms of my character analysis videos, by the way, shout out to everyone who has seen the rating analysis video. If you haven't seen it already, it will show up in the end screen thumbnail. But the first character who I wanted to analyze was Kratos from God of War. And this is before God of War Ragnarok came out. But I have seen people analyzed a lot about his character. And for the most part, if I did something, it won't add anything new. However, I just happened to revisit the cutscenes of Code Veronica once those remake rumors were circulating in 2022. At first, even I found the game to be odd and stupid, even after my first revisit in 2022. But thanks to my newly developed understanding of human psychology, I finally understood what Code Veronica were actually trying to do, along with what Claire Redfield's intended story was. And then I revisited Resident Evil Degeneration, and all of Claire's strange, very strange behaviors made sense to me, whereas it did not make sense to me at all in 2009 when I first watched that movie. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is this thing with Claire Redfield, it is my discovery. So yeah, I'm just maybe being a little too overprotective about it, but yeah, it is what it is. And if by any chance you want to make a video disproving what I am presenting, please go ahead and make it easy for me to find, such as, putting my name in the title, or at least putting that @ sign and then putting my YouTube handle so that I get that notification. So in this video, I will show you the 5 additional references to Code Veronica that only make sense to Claire that I have discovered. If you haven't watched my previous videos already, watch this one where I go over almost all Code Veronica references post Code Veronica in every instance where Claire Redfield shows up in a canonical fashion. By the way, to all those who believe that the CG movies are not canon, a 5-second Google search will tell you that the CG movies are firmly canon. It is not a case like the original Operation Javier, where you can use the evidence from in this game, Darkside Chronicles, along with other games to prove that the entirety of Darkside Chronicles is not canon. There is no such evidence in Degeneration, the movie. Claire holding a shotgun makes no difference. If you have such evidence, please put it in the comment section below and let us have a discussion about it. Why do you think, based on the evidence you present, that a movie like Resident Evil Degeneration is not canon? But now, let us move on to the 5 additional Code Veronica references. Number 17, Infinite Darkness. When Claire falls on Leon, just watch this scene very carefully.
You
okay?
Yeah. Thanks.
Did you get it? Most of you probably think that Claire falling on Leon is the Code Veronica reference and mistakenly called that an Easter egg. Watch it again, focusing on Claire's facial expression.
You okay?
Yeah.
This is what I meant when I said you need to know what to look for. That facial expression tells you that she zoned out for a moment. Some people caught this expression and vaguely related it to Steve, but many of you were confused, unable to explain why she's having such an expression, which many Resident Evil fans describe as confused. But there are others, along with apparently what I've heard, Stephanie Panisalo herself, who claimed that this was nothing but a nod to the Leon Claire ship fanboys. Does that expression look like she enjoyed that at all? No, it honestly looks like a suppressed memory surfaced and her mind drifted off to that memory, causing an involuntary reaction. If it was any indication of what might have happened between Claire and Leon, that expression would have been a lot more positive. Did you see how hollow and vapid her expression was? As if she was staring off into space or something. Her mind wandered off to a memory she was suppressing. We saw this in Degeneration. We saw this in Revelations 2. It is not fear that is the strongest emotion with her. It is sorrow. Remember when she fell on Steve? She actually stayed in that position for a while without such a vapid expression, as if she kind of liked it. Here in Infinite Darkness, notice how she twitches a little bit when Leon asks if she's okay, along with her eyes getting a little bigger as well.
You okay?
Yeah.
As if she just snapped out of whatever she zoned out to. Even the way she says, yeah, thanks. It's as if she snapped herself out of it, out of a painful memory that she suppressed. And notice the pattern. Steve's memory gets triggered, Claire's mind wanders off somewhere, and then she receives a stimulus from the environment. Either she sees something or hears something, and then she somewhat regains her focus. This was throughout Degeneration and even in Revelations 2 during the Neil transformation scene. And it's down to the expression with the large eyes and the open mouth.
Please, help me.
inside the terminal. Evacuate the building immediately.
You okay?
Yeah.
Also, keep this number 17 reference in mind for the next section. At first, I didn't think Infinite Darkness was canonical. Check my previous videos. I kept saying Infinite Darkness is canonical only to the remake timeline. But once I saw this clip, I was like, no way, man. She is not anywhere close to coming to terms with losing Steve. Next, shout out to YouTuber Xenia Gexuro, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, for facilitating this thought process. She mentioned something about Claire's reactions when things don't go her way. I actually take this one step further. Her reaction to betrayal from someone she initially trusts to be a great asset to her cause. To make it more clear, how does she react when Neil betrays her and Frederick betrays her? Both people she trusted for the cause of TerraSave?
General Grande's communication man talked. It seems that all of us, the senator included, were fooled by him.
Why? You said you were going to the server room.
I saw someone suspicious on my way there and followed him. We'll have another biohazard if this thing...
It can't be.
You were supposed to come alone.
I just wanted to see your face one more time.
Don't move!
Neil!
I did what I thought was right.
It wasn't. You better hope someone saves you!
She becomes violent. This is because someone she trusted in a biohazard betrayed her trust. After Steve, who was also in a biohazard, never betrayed her trust and kept his promise to protect her, not only against his zombie father, because if you think about it, Steve could have just waited for his zombie father to be done with Claire before shooting him. But even in his monster form, Steve would not betray Claire. And this is how Frederick's and Neil's betrayal triggered Steve's memory in one of the most severe ways possible. And that is why Claire becomes violent. And she's not normally a violent person. The betrayal reminded Claire of Steve's loyalty to her. And this goes to show that Claire is actually holding on to Steve's memory in almost a sacred fashion, so much so that she is willing to pick up arms to protect the sanctity of Steve's memory. Now, before we move on to Death Island, I want to get something off my chest because I did not find this clip before, so I could not include it in my Death Island review.
What's that?
A plasma rifle!
Which plasma rifle? This plasma rifle?
Or this plasma rifle?
Next, observe this scene from Death Island very carefully.
You still think you're fighting evil syndicates like Umbrella?
We protect the innocent.
Hardly. The huge corporations and the corrupt execs that run them. The ones getting big, fat bonuses for maintaining the status quo. That's who you work for. Who you really protect. And the innocent will continue to suffer as long as you do. You're nothing more than pawns. Suckers.
Stop right there. Think. Dylan is accusing all of them for basically being idiots. Because on the surface, they think they're doing it to protect the innocent. But in reality, they're doing it for the larger corporations so that the status quo can be maintained. Notice everyone is silent at this point because they all know, considering that RPD betrayed all of its employees, and these are former RPD employees. Dylan is right in a way. Chris, Jill, Leon, all former RPD members. So they know exactly what Dylan is talking about. Even Claire knows about this because in Resident Evil 2, Marvin and Chief Irons, both of them informed Claire of this, along with all the in-game documents that she finds. So even Claire knows exactly what Dylan is talking about. Doing things that end up maintaining the status quo, where protecting the innocent is actually a cover by these larger organizations. But if you saw my Degeneration review where I explain exactly why Claire is so obsessed with the work of TerraSave, who is the one person who should take exception with Dylan's claims right here? Who is the one person who is doing this for personal redemption reasons that only make sense to her as an apology to someone she failed to save? As Chris, Jill, Leon are all silent as they're all RPD employees. Who is the one person who isn't a former RPD employee and should say something at this very moment despite knowing exactly what Dylan is talking about?
Suckers.
What do you know?
The fact that the movie itself showed you that everyone else is silent except Claire, where she said something back, screams at you that Claire is doing what she's doing for a reason separate from everyone else, as in a personal reason unique to her. This is also storytelling through directing. And I have demonstrated in my Cole Phelps analysis video as well as my Degeneration review, there is something called storytelling through directing. Refer back to reference number 7 of the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche for a more detailed explanation. This is why this explanation that Claire Redfield is helping victims of biohazard from a distance because she cares about people makes no sense. Dylan even points out the hypocrisy that other BSAA members are literally putting their lives on the line to help others, but Claire is helping from a distance because she cares more about people? This narrative alone tells you that Claire does not care about people as much as the BSAA members, because the BSAA members voluntarily put their lives on the line to help others.
I bet you keep doing it out of pride, because it makes you feel like you're doing good.
Nothing wrong with helping people.
Keep telling yourself that. We both know you prefer sitting back and letting others do the dirty work.
And we know this is against Claire's nature. This further tells you that something else is acting as a mental block that is stopping her from committing so heavily for the cause. And getting back to number 16, remember what I said about number 16? Claire is infected and there is someone who is dying. And Steve was someone who was also infected, ended up saving someone's life. So Claire was basically put in a similar position. And yes, that is why she acted so strangely against logic. And also remember, Claire says,
Can't do anything about me, but I can stop your bleeding.
and also notice this scene.
We're all dying. How can you be so calm? We got Jill.
Who is the one person who does not say we got Jill? And remember what Claire says?
Can't do anything about me.
We got Jill.
Only Leon and Chris say we got Jill. Claire says there's nothing that can be done about her. This also shows you there is a bit of selfishness to Claire in her doing what she is doing. It's for her own conscience. Honestly, I could have made this another reference of the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. That at this point, she already accepted death. But I think more evidence might be required to make this an actual reference. But if you guys think it could be a reference, please feel free to do so. And let me know in the comment section below. Next, notice this scene.
Stop. Stop. Thank you. It's okay. My life was all about me. Didn't care about anything else. If I'd met you all sooner, maybe I could have turned it around.
Just let me help you.
Notice Dr. Taylor first asks Claire to stop and she stops. Then he basically says he led a very selfish life, didn't care about anyone else. But if he would have met them sooner, maybe things would have been different. Maybe he could have turned things around. And Claire immediately insists on helping Dr. Taylor. As headstrong and stubborn Claire is, she stops helping a bleeding man at his request, despite him being dying, and then interrupts him and tries to help him anyways. And right after, she stops again. Furthermore, from a directing standpoint, that action,
maybe I could have turned it around.
Just let me help you.
makes no sense. Claire acting that way, interrupting Dr. Taylor to try and help him, adds nothing to the plot, nor does it add to Claire's character, unless you know what to look for. Dr. Taylor mentioned this in a specific sequence. He said,
My life was all about me. Didn't care about anything else.
wasn't Steve acting very selfishly, looking out mostly for himself towards the very beginning of their interaction?
I heard there's an airport around here. Well, once I find it, I can finally escape from this crazy island. Well, I'll see ya.
Hey, wait up!
I don't want you following me, lady. He'll only slow me down. There's no way he could get here, even if he is your brother.
Yes, he can. I'm sure of it.
No way. He won't come. You'll just end up disappointed if you rely on others. Believe me, I know. Looks cool, huh?
Oh, I need those. Give them to me.
You gotta be kidding. I found it and I'm keeping it.
Then Dr. Taylor says,
If I'd met you all sooner, maybe I could have turned it around.
what was the last thing Steve said before his love confession?
I'm glad that I met you.
As in, he's glad to have met someone like her before dying. As in, he wishes he would have met someone like her sooner. Then maybe things would have been different. Additionally, pay very close attention to the sound in this scene in Death Island.
My life was all about me. Didn't care about anything else. If I'd met you all sooner, maybe I could have turned it around.
Just let me help you.
One might say that might be the point when that interaction reminded her a bit too much about Steve. Focusing back on the sound, there is a significantly stronger shiver and urgency in her voice when she says, just let me help you, indicating that she was about to cry.
You're bleeding bad. I have to stop it. Can't do anything about me, but I can stop your bleeding.
What's the point?
Just let me help you.
After 17 years, she still acts this broken. This makes it number 20 of the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. And keep in mind, this poor girl, it's not registering in her head at all. Remember, Claire is infected with a dilute version of the T virus. So, if Claire manages to save Dr. Taylor's life and no one shows up with a vaccine, then Claire will eventually turn into a monster and rip Dr. Taylor into pieces, making him suffer a more painful death compared to letting him just bleed to death. It's not registering in her mind at all that the more humane thing to do at this point, given the circumstance, is to let Dr. Taylor die a peaceful death instead of a painful one. All that's in her head is a similarity to Steve and a sense of desperation for Claire to redeem herself. This is what I mean. There is a bit of selfishness to what she is doing. Remember in my last video, I said that it's as if Claire needed to save Steve for herself. Now it looks like Claire needs to redeem herself for herself. This is something that's also carried over from Degeneration, Infinite Darkness, and Revelations 2. As in, whenever something strong reminds her of Steve, Claire cannot think straight, even after 17 years, which is a very long time, mind you. Steve's memory is so powerful that it impairs Claire's logical thinking. Her mind wanders off. She temporarily lets go of her platonic protective big sister instinct. She becomes violent. She acts against logic. In fact, it almost looks like Claire turns into somewhat of a different person whenever something reminds her of Steve in a strong manner. I say somewhat because if I say entirely instead of somewhat, then I will have to say that the trauma after losing Steve gave her split personality disorder, which I don't think is the case, but she is somewhat in that vicinity. Finally, when Dr. Taylor dies, Claire has a crying expression. This person, Dr. Taylor, not only created all those viruses in that facility, but accuses Claire for the Harvardville incident, the Degeneration incident. This is not someone Claire knew or really cared about. Even Annette, Claire saw her as Sherry's mother, and Claire really cared about Sherry. So why was Claire about to cry here? By now, you probably know the answer. So let's just reveal it. Now, let us delve into the psychology of Claire's trauma, where I actually get to demonstrate my understanding a bit more. I've recently seen a video that had a title something like The Psychology of Resident Evil 2, where the person tried to include elements of classical and operant conditioning, and the keyword being tried, because way to try and fit an oval peg into a round hole, buddy. But that's a nice attempt. So along those lines, I thought that I should actually do something similar and talk about Claire's trauma from a psychology perspective, going into more detail on the psychology aspect compared to my previous videos. Before I move further with this section, I need to clarify some things. First, if you want to learn about the 15 other references that I did not fully elaborate in this video, then please go back and watch my previous videos about Claire Redfield, starting with the original Claire Redfield story everyone missed, followed by Resident Evil Degeneration Unique Detailed Review and CVX versus DSC. Second, I saw online that the alternate explanation is a viable one, that being that Claire is actually mentally the weakest amongst all protagonists and is actually a coward. Here is proof that she isn't. Being a civilian, not a police officer, or a special forces agent. Claire infiltrated an umbrella facility and caused all this trouble. But this clearly shows that Claire is mentally tough at this point. But it is Resident Evil Degeneration that introduces you to a mentally weaker Claire Redfield. And even there, Claire's not a coward. She has that awkward gunplay scene. But people still figured out that Claire's acting a bit mentally weaker in Degeneration. And this tells you that something happened to her in Code Veronica and not Raccoon City that made her this way. We even see this in Revelations 2. Claire comes back in the good ending, not the bad ending. And that too after Barry goes to the island, not alongside Barry. If she was so mentally tough at this point, she would have accompanied Barry in both good and bad scenarios. This once again tells you that there's a mental block somewhere that is preventing her from fully being immersed in such an endeavor. Next, here is even more proof that Claire thought Steve was dead when she said, "Oh, Steve," at this scene in Code Veronica.
Oh, Steve.
And this is without using Darkside Chronicles, as I have shown that Darkside Chronicles is not canon. Check out my CVX versus DSC review and the specific chapter dedicated to this evidence for that. Anyone remember the original Resident Evil 2? In the canonical Claire A scenario, when she perceives that Marvin was infected but alive,
Hang in there. Are you the only officer left in the building?
does she slowly walk up to him? No, Claire runs to him to check up on him. And by this point, Claire is already familiar with zombies. At this point, Marvin was a stranger. Claire had no idea who Marvin was. She knew Steve for much longer than she knew Marvin. If Claire thought Steve was alive, she should have run to him even faster, but she doesn't. This means that Claire thought that Steve was dead at this point, as in the first time she saw him die. Now, go back and watch the Steve death scene again and pay very close attention to the responses by comparing how she reacted the first time she saw him die compared to how she reacted the second time she saw him die. Now to the analysis. Please keep certain definitions in mind on top of the common sense ones. There is a phenomenon in psychology called classical conditioning. This is something you learn about very early in psychology. This is when a stimulus, which is initially called a neutral stimulus, for example, a bell being rung right before food is presented to a dog, initially causes an unconditioned response, which is involuntary. The involuntary part is important. Classical conditioning occurs when the bell being rung causes the dog to show an involuntary response even before the food is presented. When this happens, the bell, in our example, changes from a neutral stimulus to a conditioned stimulus, and the subsequent involuntary response becomes the conditioned response. This conversion of the neutral stimulus to a conditioned stimulus causing an involuntary conditioned response must happen. In responses involving fear and sorrow, repetition for the conditioning to happen is not necessary. And the involuntary response is not identical all the time. Now moving on to conditioned trauma response. Here's what you need to know. As the name suggests, it is a type of conditioned response that happens due to trauma. This can also be a part of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD for short. In this situation, anything can act as a trauma trigger or cue, reminding the person of the traumatic event. This can also include intrusive memories acting as the trauma trigger. Intrusive memories are involuntary, distressing, and uncontrollable memories of past events. These also can be a symptom of PTSD. Intrusive memories involve mental imagery-based impressions that intrude into the mind involuntarily and are emotional. In all of these, the theme of the response is its involuntary nature. Finally, I have confirmed this with faculty in my college. Conditioned trauma response is a form of classical conditioning. Now let us begin with degeneration.
You look tired.
Blame my new boyfriend. He won't let me get any sleep.
Boyfriend, huh? Is that what you're calling the WHO report now?
FDA, actually.
Overcompensation with another task to distract her mental focus from thinking about Steve. The fact that she insinuates a romantic relationship with this overcompensation task is yet another sign of what Steve meant to Claire.
This is too much.
Very easily angered, also a sign of PTSD. This also shows you that biohazards are a very sensitive topic to her, and she will not tolerate even the supporters of her cause if they make light of it.
Please, help me.
Attention.
This is classical conditioning. The neutral stimulus, Sherry saying, "Help me," when Claire first meets Sherry.
Help me!
The unconditioned response, Claire takes out the zombie. The traumatic event, Steve saying, "Help me," just before turning into a monster.
Help me, Claire!
And eventually Steve dying. And there's where the association or conditioning happened. After 7 years, conditioned stimulus, the senator saying, "Please help me."
Please, help me.
Conditioned response, Claire cannot think straight.
Attention.
And this is an involuntary response, as Steve's memory was triggered.
No way. This can't be happening.
This is conditioned trauma response, which is temporarily stronger than her protective big sister platonic instincts with Ronnie. Notice that this event happens right after the classical conditioning event that happened moments ago, where Steve's memory was strongly triggered. This, coupled with the fact that Claire does not act scared, but looks like she's about to cry, clearly links the two responses and is strong evidence of her suppression of Steve's memory. Furthermore, the movie shows you that Claire does not act traumatized upon zombies appearing in the airport before Steve's memory was triggered, but she acts traumatized only after Steve's memory was triggered, further showing that Claire views Code Veronica as her failure. The intrusive memory is Claire failing to save Steve the last time she was in a biohazard.
We just ended up making things worse.
You chose the role of rescuer.
Leon, thank you.
Focusing on the crying tone, check reference number 6 for more details. This is a conditioned trauma response. The trauma trigger, or cue, is the fact that Leon called Claire a rescuer, as the last time in a biohazard she tried to rescue someone she valued, she failed, and that person was Steve. This is classical conditioning. The neutral stimulus is when she encountered self-destruct system sirens in Resident Evil 2.
The self-destruct sequence has been activated. Repeat, the self-destruct sequence has been activated. This sequence may not be aborted. All employees proceed to the emergency car at the bottom platform.
Leon, we made it.
Claire, is that you?
never mind that right now. Leon, you have to go back and get Sherry for me. I left her in the security office. Please, you must save her.
The unconditioned response, Claire proceeds to save Sherry and escaping with her with the antidote.
Wait a second. What are you gonna do? Where are you going?
I still have a few loose ends to take care of. I'm counting on you. Sherry!
Stay down.
I have the antidote. If I give it to her.
Claire? Where am I?
It worked.
Oh, Sherry, you're gonna be okay.
Thanks, Claire.
Similar things you can say about when she heard that sound in Code Veronica as well. She proceeded with the task as the unconditioned response.
Let's get out of here.
The self-destruct system has
That
been
freak! He's trying to blow us up along with the entire facility. Come on, we gotta get to that airport.
Right.
Claire! Those must be the remaining survivors.
We'd better get out of here too.
Right. We can't take off unless we raise the bridge.
Leave that to me. You stay here and make the preparations for takeoff.
The trauma, Claire losing Steve, then hearing the self-destruct sequence sirens and hearing similar lights. Refer back to reference number 8 for more details. Coupled with the fact that her farewell to Steve was extremely sad and painful, as proven by the monologue of Claire found in Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica and also online, which also happened very contiguously to each other. Contiguity is actually very important in different forms of classical conditioning as well. 7 years later, the conditioned stimulus, the sirens and lights. The conditioned response, Claire's thinking gets scrambled, just like when Steve's memory was triggered earlier. As a result, she has to visibly shake off the suppressed memory of Steve surfacing so that she can focus on the task at hand.
Disable the system. There's gotta be a way.
As I explained in reference number 9, this is a hallucination response, which is also an involuntary response and is actually more severe than a classically conditioned response. But I would put it under a conditioned trauma response. The trigger, this is the only time in the movie where she has to solve a puzzle-style problem in a biohazard. In the last biohazard, she solved many of these problems with Steve's help. The hallucination, as I have shown in previous videos, is most likely her thinking that she heard Steve's voice, which explains the nature of the surprised and swift response, and which is also the intrusive memory.
I know what Leon would do.
This is vicarious acquisition. This is from the psychology theory of Albert Bandura. Another Canadian! Claire acts and sounds so Canadian in Degeneration
You didn't seem worried about that when you were just telling me everything.
that even her trauma is Canadian. But jokes aside, vicarious acquisition is when a person tries to emulate another person who the first person views as a role model, because this role model is viewed to be more competent than him or her. This is something I highlighted in my previous video. This alone, the hallucination and the vicarious acquisition, should tell you that losing Steve broke her without question, whereas surviving 2 biohazards had a strengthening effect on Chris, Jill, and Leon.
Don't move!
This is again conditioned trauma response. The trigger, she got betrayed after trusting someone, especially in terms of the cause of TerraSave, which, let me remind you, she is doing partly as an act of personal redemption. This is also evidenced by Revelations 2, when Claire shows a severe conditioned trauma response to Neil's transformation, who betrayed her, and not to Pedro's transformation or Gabe's transformation, who did not betray her. Next, weight gain, a very common side effect of severe depression. The fact that she is showing this after 7 years is a very strong indication of how bad it must have been in the immediate aftermath of losing Steve and surviving that biohazard, where she did not have such a long time to recover. And I've seen people online who think that Claire did not gain weight. You don't believe me? Look at this scene.
Would it cause trouble if I saw something in particular?
It's like someone took 2 handfuls of baby fat and just slathered it all over her face. Look how puffy and round Claire's face looks compared to Frederick. And Claire is 17 years younger than him. Claire used to be very thin in Resident Evil 2 and Code Veronica. What the hell happened to her? Frederick isn't this fat. Leon isn't this fat. Angela isn't this fat. Infinite darkness now.
Okay?
Yeah. Thanks.
This is conditioned trauma response. The trigger, as well as the intrusive memory, is that the last time she fell on someone like this, it was Steve. And she ended up loving him back by the end of his life. But this response is so strong that it could be considered borderline classical conditioning. And sorry, this happened again. I discovered something else about Infinite Darkness, so I have to update my script on the fly after the previous segments have been recorded. First, pay very close attention to the ending of Infinite Darkness.
I thought I told you not to do anything stupid.
Hello, I'm joking. When are you gonna stop treating me like a kid?
Probably never.
Anyways, about the check. Do you have it?
Thought you called because you wanted to grab dinner.
I want to make a copy of it and give it to all the newspapers. This thing's gonna blow up, big time.
I can't.
What? So that's how it's gonna be. You do things your way and I do things mine. Okay.
First of all, this tells you that Leon barely thinks of Claire as dating material. Leon treats her like a kid. And the whole dinner line, I think that's part of a running joke. Anyways, focus on Claire. She called Leon to that location to get the information from Leon so that she can go public with the facts. Leon says no, and Claire simply walks away a little disappointed. Disappointed because she didn't get to do things her way. This also shows the hint of selfishness to what she's doing that I alluded to previously. I don't think she's aware of it, but you can clearly see at some level, she ends up using people to fulfill her need to redeem herself. Remember Degeneration? She was ready to throw Frederick under the bus when virus matters were involved, and at this point, she still believed that Will Pharma were developing T-virus vaccines, and she was willing to throw him under the bus when virus matters were involved.
The senator is a member of the special committee that decided to bomb Raccoon City.
I've got to tell Leon.
Wait, no, If you do that, what's going to happen to me?
You didn't seem worried about that when you were just telling me everything.
As you've seen, in Infinite Darkness, she tries to use Leon for her need to do things her way, because this is her redemption. Then in Revelations 2, she keeps viewing Neil's betrayal from the perspective of TerraSave, indicating that she values Neil a lot as an asset to TerraSave, as well as view Neil as a surrogate elder brother, as TerraSave is supposed to save people.
TerraSave was supposed to save people!
Additionally, did you notice a constant regression of Claire's characterization? Degeneration Claire is a regression from the Claire you see at the beginning of Code Veronica. As Degeneration, Claire appears mentally weaker. Infinite Darkness, Claire is a regression from Degeneration, Claire. As Infinite Darkness, Claire acts a bit more cold and lifeless. Revelations 2, Claire is a regression from Infinite Darkness, Claire. As in Revelations 2, Claire does not act as nice with children as she used to.
Wait! It's okay. Don't be scared. What's your name? Where are you from? Did that lady put you here? Where are you?
Whoa, down, Claire. Let me talk to her. You must be so scared.
In Revelations 2, she doesn't even get close to the child's eye level, and she did this the past 3 times. And in Death Island, the regression is so strong that the only person who feels like she does not belong in that movie is Claire. And all of these have references to Code Veronica that only make sense to Claire. The only time her characterization showed a significant overall progression was from Resident Evil 2 to Code Veronica. After that, it just started going down and down and down. This means that whatever happened in Code Veronica, the incident where Claire finally reunited with her brother after an absence of 5 months, caused this regression, as the trauma is chipping away at her personality and it's slowly starting to kill her inside. You know what? This is an updated script, and I am making this number 22 of the effect of losing Steve on Claire's psyche. Revelations 2 now.
You gonna use that?
It's more reliable than any person.
This is classical conditioning. The neutral stimulus is when Claire finds a gun in Resident Evil 2 and in Code Veronica. The unconditioned response is Claire equips the gun without much incident or saying anything strange or doing anything strange.
There's a gun inside.
Better take it with you.
The memory.
You see? This thing is a lot more reliable than any person.
The traumatic event obviously being that Steve died. So in Revelations 2, when Claire finds a gun in a biohazard, the conditioned response is that the first thing Claire's mind goes back to is Steve, as shown by the fact that Claire quotes Steve verbatim about guns being more reliable than any person.
Oh, God. What is this place?
This is conditioned trauma response. The trigger, the revelation that it was an island. The intrusive memory. The last time she was in a biohazard on an island, it eventually led to her losing Steve. Raccoon City, Panamistan, and Harvardville were not on an island. This is conditioned trauma response, and I think at this point it is self-explanatory. Refer back to number 17 for additional context.
You're nothing more than pawns. Suckers.
What do you know? Can't do anything about me.
Stop. Thank you. It's okay. Maybe I could have turned it around.
Just let me help you.
Good.
All of these are conditioned trauma responses, and the intrusive memory is obviously that of Steve at several times. I'm sorry to anyone still in doubt. Claire didn't care about Steve? What did Steve mean to Claire? Steve is her pain. That's how deeply she loved him. None of this platonic nonsense. Steve is her pain.
Pain is required to create fear.
What? Who the fuck is quoting poetry?
Are you afraid? You can tell me.
She is doing what she is doing for the rest of her known life, partly in Steve's memory. And that is why, if there is any song that suits Claire Redfield from the original timeline, the first song that comes to mind is Crawling by Linkin Park. I mean, I would also say My Immortal by Evanescence, but I am much more of a Linkin Park fan. But if you want to make a GMV or a tribute video using My Immortal, please go right ahead and let me know about it so that I can go and check it out. But I'm sorry, I have to go on a bit of a rant here. I strongly believe that this is the reason why Capcom is avoiding a Code Veronica remake. Because most of you fans want Code Veronica remade for this Chris Wesker stuff, which was the B story of the game, not because of this Claire Steve stuff, which was the A story, the main story of the game. And Capcom themselves are telling you again and again that the A story has haunted Claire for the rest of her life. Every single time Claire Redfield showed up canonically, 22 times. Resident Evil fans, you guys don't make a big deal out of this obvious phenomenon. So why should Capcom remake Code Veronica when the fans want a Code Veronica remake for the B story, not the A story? Capcom can simply put in a few flashbacks in Resident Evil 5 remake to tell the B story between Chris and Wesker that was there in the original Code Veronica. Why does Capcom need to remake the entire game when the fans don't even understand the importance of the A story? Trust me, make a big deal out of Claire's trauma and watch the results. If you really want a Code Veronica remake, all 22 of these instances are not Easter eggs. And I don't think you guys understand the severity of the psychological damage yet. The damage caused by losing Steve to Claire's psyche. Do you know where you usually see classical conditioning? You see classical conditioning usually in dogs, because classical conditioning is mostly associated with the more primal part of the brain, where instinct is stronger than control. That is why you also see elements of classical conditioning in very, very young children. That is how deep the wound from losing Steve is to Claire. That's right. Steve's death hit Claire so hard that the trauma conditioned her like a dog. And the severity of Steve's loss nearly gave her something like a split personality disorder. And let me reiterate one more time, this is the only explanation that connects pretty much all of her strange behaviors that don't make sense on the surface, but does all make sense to Claire. People, I now believe that based on what is presented, I find myself in a position where I hate to admit this, but it seems I understand Claire Redfield's character better than anyone else, better than even all three of her voice actresses. All the evidence points to this fact. And this should not be the case. Blind man should not see so many things. But this just goes to show you how poorly Claire is executed as a character. Now that I've shown you that losing Steve broke Claire for the past 2 years, and even I'm getting tired of it, despite this being my discovery, I'm getting tired of it. Let's move on to how I would end Claire's trauma story. This section is a suggestion by my friend Urza Titania Wins. I am not a drama writer or a soap opera writer, but one of my friends on YouTube asked me to do this, so I am doing this. How I would end Claire's story. This depends on where she shows up next. From what I am coming across online, Stephanie Panisalo is unaware of Resident Evil 9's progress, indicating she won't be in the game. So either they got someone else to voice Claire, or Claire won't be part of the game. Or it's part of the NDA she signed and she's throwing people off the scent. But let's say, hypothetically, Claire in her 40s is in Resident Evil 9. The first thing that needs to happen is that Chris needs to confront Claire about holding on to Steve's memory so tightly. Have it something like it's starting to significantly affect her behavior. She isn't even as nice with children anymore. She is becoming more cynical. And she's just difficult to be around. Or something along those lines. This is something The Last of Us Part 1 did well, by the way. At a very pivotal point, Ellie confronted Joel about Sarah.
Get up. We're leaving.
And if I say no?
Do you even realize what your life means? Huh? Running off like that, putting yourself at risk? It's pretty goddamn stupid.
Well, I guess we're both disappointed with each other then.
What do you want from me?
Admit that you wanted to get rid of me the whole time.
Tommy knows this area.
Oh,
better
fuck
than...
that.
Well, I'm sorry. I trust him better than I trust myself.
Stop with the bullshit. What are you so afraid of? That I'm gonna end up like Sam? I can't get infected. I can take care of myself.
How many close calls have we had?
Well, we seem to be doing all right so far.
And now you'll be doing even better with Tommy.
Not her, you know.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And...
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
You're right. You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad. And we are going our separate ways.
And after the initial anger, Joel came around to seeing Ellie as his own daughter. I mean, it took Joel about 10 minutes to do the whole 180, and I personally think it should have taken a bit longer, but the idea is there. However, this can lead to Claire showing up with much more of an aggressive tone in parts of the game in Resident Evil 9 where people needed to be rescued. In her mind, she is now starting to fight back against the mental block. And in the ending, before the end credits, Chris can approach Claire about this, and Claire says something like, "You were right, I need to move on, it's been more than half my life, and it'll take some time, yada, yada, yada." Something along those lines. Then post-credits, I guess they can show a few years later, Claire finally got married to some person, and, on the next anniversary of Steve's death, she visits a grave filled with flowers or something like that, with something written on the gravestone. And she finally says something to Steve's grave, crying and all that. And husband comes from behind, asks what's wrong, and she finally opens up about Steve. And the camera fades to black with the last line, Claire saying his name was Steve. Something sappy like that, man. I'm not good at this. That is one way to do it. The other way to do it is that whilst Claire is actually fighting these monsters with increased aggression, she actually ends up dying. And with her last words, she says something like, Steve, I'll see you soon, baby, or something along those lines. Like Rodrigo said, looks like I can finally see my family again in Code Veronica.
Looks like I can meet my family again.
Or something sappy like that. And the rumors actually point to this second path. Because if I'm not mistaken, some of the rumors suggest that someone is going to die in Resident Evil 9. And I've seen a poll out there where the people are suggesting that if someone were to die, it has to be Claire. This second path might end up happening. But those are just my thoughts about this. I would really love to know how you would end Claire's trauma story, because Urza Titanium Wins was right. Yes, Claire is obviously still traumatized for the rest of her life by losing Steve, but this has to lead somewhere. There has to be an ending to this. So go crazy in the comment section with the fanfic hat on how you would end Claire's trauma story. However, I will maintain this. If they have to end Claire's trauma story this way, the best person to do this would be Allison Court. If given this position, I think you will see how good Allison is when she's given the task of playing a character with a lot of depth and maturity to her. I personally think it would be best if Allison tapped into her drama acting abilities for this. But if there has to be another person who I think will do a good job, a few names come to mind. Rosie Okinawa is one of them. Felicia Day is another one. So let me know, who else apart from Allison or Stephanie do you think would be the best voice for Claire Redfield in this scenario where her trauma story is being brought to an end? Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. I am not going to say this is my last video about Claire Redfield, because every time I say that, something else happens. I make some more discoveries. Someone else points something else out, and the content piles up to an amount where I have to make a video about it. So this time I'm not going to say anything like that. Please do hit that like, subscribe, bell notification buttons, and please do share this with people who you think might find this content very interesting. This is your boy Tanveer Said, the Bengal Dragon, signing out. I leave you with this short music video.
You okay?
The words he said, the sound she heard, the assistance she had, the remarks he made.
Something inside me that pulls beneath the surface, consuming, confusing. This lack of self-control I fear is never ending, controlling. I can't see.
You see, people, I told you, Claire's story is very, very Bollywood. Oh. Ta 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 ta.
Assemble the men.